Hello and welcome to my Julio Advanced Guide. In this video I'm going to be going over more advanced and more practical strategies that you can use with Julio. In the basic guide I go over the units, their stats, their weapon skills, like their abilities, their upgrades. I don't necessarily go into like advanced tactics. So this is more of where the rubber meets the road sort of situation. So first let's go over what items Julio is good with. I would say if you want to get the most out of him as a battery, just put 2 speed bracelets on him. If you don't have 2 speed bracelets, throw 2 speed amulets or a speed bracelet and a speed amulet. The faster he is, the more turns he can have in a given set of turns. So the way speed works, if I have 20 speed and you have 40 speed, you take twice as many turns as me. So if I have 25 speed and you have 35 speed, you get roughly like 30% more turns than me. So yeah, definitely worth it to have as high of a speed as you can get. Even if it only gives him an extra turn every now and then, it also causes him to act faster in general. So if you just want to have him be a battery and that's all he's doing, then just throw speed items on him. That's pretty much the best thing for that. If you want him to be able to contribute to follow-up attacks and to help damage as well as be a battery, so in this case he's more of like a damaging battery or a unit that deals damage and then also batteries as needed, then strength items are fine. He has an accuracy of 60, which is pretty good. He shouldn't be missing, and if you hit enemy units from the side or back, he should never miss, really. And then for magic, so if you want him to spike enemies down, like enemy shield users, so like you can have him be a battery until an enemy shield user approaches, and then he can act as like a mage. What you can do is you can throw 2 magic bracelets on him or 2 magic items, and when he uses Best Regards, it's actually a magical melee attack, so this can boost the damage of this by quite a bit, allowing him to hit like 250 to 350 against enemy shield units at level 50, so that's pretty good. And then if you want him to be an off-tank battery, meaning he body blocks and just takes hits, because he has, with 5 TP, his TP barrier ability allows him to take 5% damage reduction per TP, so total of 25% damage reduction. So if you want him to be tanking, definitely throw like some health items on him. Defense items I wouldn't do. I would just do 2 health items. And then with TP barrier, he's actually quite tanky. So you can see here with a single health bracelet, he has 571 health. If I put a second one on him, let's do that actually. Let's throw another HP bracelet on him. Should be somewhere laying around here. Let's see who has them. Take one off of Grama. So you can see here you can get him to 621 health plus a 25% damage reduction. So he can be an off tank, he can be an off damage dealer, and what I mean by off tank and off damage dealer is he's going to contribute to damage and his damage is meaningful, or he's going to contribute to tanking and his tanking is meaningful, but he's not going to carry it. So he's kind of like, 30% battery, 70% damage sort of situation. So being an off tank, being a pure battery, being an off damage, all of these are really good for him. So that is his item setup. So in this case, I'm going to just probably just duo speed bracelets on him, or speed amulets, just get him to 30 speed. So, and he has 521 health, so he's pretty durable. Alright, so he is primarily a battery who will be using Moment of Truth to restore 1 TP a turn for 1 TP, and also boost magic and melee units. So if we look at Moment of Truth, it increases strength and magic attack for 3 turns. This is really useful for boosting damage as well as batterying, because what it lets you do is he can maintain this on up to 3 allies. So if you're running 3 mages, he can maintain a damage boost on all 3 of them, as well as allowing them to cast higher TP cost spells and just allowing them to cast a spell every turn. So just using him in this case with speed items is really good. And then if he needs to, he can use Finish Them to give them 2 TP for 3, or Inheritor to give them any amount. The difference between them, like Finish Them is still useful, even when you get Inheritor, and I'll go over why. But for now, we'll just go into the next point. He can use Finish Them to send 2 TP to an ally at 1 to 3 range for 3 TP. So one thing to note about Finish Them and Inheritor is Inheritor has a 1 to 2 range, Finish Them has a 1 to 3, or actually 1 to 4 range. That's actually a typo on my part. in my notes here. So the 1 to 4 range really does matter. It's essentially double the range. So if he's further away from something and he needs to run up and battery someone, he can do that. And also note the range of Moment of Truth is 1, so he can't really throw Moment of Truth. He can throw Finish Them pretty far, and Inheritor is like kind of like in between the two. So if you need to get something battery at range, Finish Them is your option. Inheritor is good if they're kind of close already, and then Moment of Truth if you're already right next to them or within moving, walking distance. But this is a pretty good skill. He can use Inheritor to send all of his TP for 1-to-1 ratio. So if he has 2 TP, he can Inheritor someone for 2. So the big upside of Inheritor is you can most efficiently transfer TP from Julio to another ally. So if Julio has 3 and he Inheritors, he gives them 3. So this is extremely useful if they're at 0 or 1 TP to give them 3 to 4, but never 5. And I'm going to go over that in a second. Okay. Using Inheritor at 5 TP is generally a waste. Most of your units will have 1 to 2 TP, and sending them 5 is overkill. You are better off using Finish Them to send 2 TP for 3, so that Julio can conserve TP while also spiking an ally's TP. So, one thing to note with Julio is if I use Inheritor and he has 5 TP, he loses all of it. So he also will lose his TP barrier damage reduction. So if you give someone all 5 of his TP, he's now just at like base stats and like base damage reduction, which is fine because he usually doesn't get targeted anyways. But it can be worth noting that he loses tanking, and if you are using him in a position where he is tanking hits from like enemy ranged units, for example, having him use Inheritor will make him vulnerable all of a sudden. So something to keep in mind. And also, if you just do like the basic math, like let's say you want Corinton to get a Glacial Moon off, right? And Corinton is standing on ice. So he's at, let's say, 0 TP. It's his turn, he'll naturally regen 1, and then TP on ice puts him at 2. So if you want Corinton to Glacial Moon, using Finish Them is more than enough. So if Julio is at 5 TP, and he Inheritors Corinton for 5, and Corinton is already going to be at 2, you're just wasting TP. So Finish Them would be better, because Julio gets to conserve 2 of his TP, putting him at 2. He'll spend 3. So Finish Them allows you to hold on to excess TP. And assuming that you don't need to use Inheritor, you should be using Finish Them most of the time. Because in the example I outlined, Corinton still gets to get Glacial Moon off. The difference is, instead of being put at 5 TP and Julio losing everything, he's put at 4 and Julio conserves 2 TP so that he can use Finish Them another turn. Or he could Inheritor someone for 3. So Finish Them is still relevant. Even if not just for the range, but for the ability to conserve high amounts of TP on Julio. So it's generally a waste to use Inheritor to give someone 5, because everyone naturally regens 1 TP aside from like Decimal. So if you're going to be using Inheritor and something is at 1 or 2 TP, Finish Them is almost always the better option. There are exceptions. So for example, if you need like Erador to King Shield and he's at 0 TP, and Julio's at 5 TP, using Inheritor could be optimal. He'll still lose out on a lot, but it's better than having Erador die or preventing tanking, and a shutdown from occurring. So it's definitely situational, but I would say overall you should be planning on spamming Finish Them more than Inheritor to conserve TP on Julio. Alright. The next point is using Inheritor at 4 TP. So I already went over all that. Just from memory. Okay, so Julio can bypass physical armor with Best Regards, which is a magical melee attack. He can crit back shield units for huge damage. He can run magic bracelets to further boost this ability. Best Regards generally deals increased damage to melee units, as most melee units have higher physical defense than magic. And also, even if they don't, they usually have either the same or they have lower magical defense. So the big upside of running magic bracelets is Best Regards hits quite hard. So like, let's say for example, you can see Not on My Watch hits a little bit harder, but it's more consistent because most enemy melee have higher physical defense, so generally will hit for less. So let's actually throw some magic bracelets on him. I'll just do a magic bracelet and a magic amulet. So he was at like 240 for Best Regards, like 244. Now he's at 271. Now, if you hit a shield unit with this will nuke them down. This melts shield units, and that's one of the main things he's going to be encountering as a durable off tank. He's kind of like a midliner who's going to be near mages and kind of defending them. So this is, and it's 1 TP. This is a fantastic ability for fighting enemy melee in general. So the magic bracelet thing is just always good. You can't go wrong with it if you want him to be like an off damage dealer. So that's why it's good. He's very rarely going to be hitting enemy mages, and if he is, he can just hit them with Not on My Watch for similar spike damage for 2 TP. Or he can just use a normal attack, which hits pretty hard as well. Because normal mage's physical defense is terrible. So he can just whack him with his sword. He doesn't have to do an ability. And then you can Best Regards. This makes his attacks efficient. His single target damage is good. Okay, so Julio recovers TP, 1 TP on kill, regardless of the amount of things killed. I'm mentioning that because AoE from Intimidation can kill multiple things. AoE from throwing stones can kill multiple things. Same thing with Frederica. If you kill 5 things, you still just get 1 TP for all of it. But he can restore his own TP by last hitting, and he can restore his TP by follow-up attacks. So that can be extremely useful for having him just like battery something and then move near an enemy. And then if he last hits that enemy from a follow-up attack initiated by another unit, he will get TP from that. So you can get pretty advanced with Julio just by like his positioning. Same thing with Benedict. After Benedict boosts something, you should position him next to an enemy so that when you have like Sarah Noah, who's like forced on every story mission except for some exceptions, you get free chip damage in. So you can't go wrong with that. Julio can also throw an item to last hit something, helping him nuke down foes. So as I mentioned earlier, he can also trigger TP KO plus by killing with items. So the big upside of items, similar to using Best Regards, magical items do deal scaled damage versus shield users, and generally will hit harder versus enemies who have low magic defense. And it also lets him hit at range, so it can turn him into like a mini mage. So he can do a little bit of everything, and he's definitely a strong unit. He can do a little bit of battery, he can do a little bit of damage, he can do a little bit of tanking. He's actually pretty good at all of it, unlike Hasabara, who kind of suffers as a generalist. But alright, so that's the use cases. Now let's go over like units he pairs well with and why. Alright, so let's start with Quahog, because he has a broken combo with Quahog. So Quahog reverse space-time. You can have all of your units at like high, like 4 to 5 TP, burn through like high jump, glacial moon, crazy weapon skills like Bloody Cross, just like nuke the enemies down, just completely wipe down enemies. Reverse space-time. All the dead enemies will not be reversed. All of your units' HP, TP, status effects, positions will be reset. Julio can use Inheritor. On Quahog, and he can do this every single turn because Julio will get reset by reverse space-time. So as long as Julio batteries Quahog before he uses it, or I'm sorry, after he uses it, Quahog will use it again, and in between Quahog's turns, Julio will catch the TP reset. So he can just continually Inheritor on Quahog so that Quahog can reverse space-time, and your entire team can use their best, strongest abilities every single turn and kill enemies and reset everything. And if you do this right, with high speed, especially on Quahog, and on all your units, you can just keep resetting everything, and then enemies won't be able to counterattack you. So it's extremely broken. So for that reason, you could argue Julio's S tier just for that build, because he's the only one who can do that. The reason for this is Medina can only battery twice, and she can only put 2 TP on Quahog, so he actually can't spam reverse space-time with Medina. He needs Julio, who can give him over 4 TP or higher. So, all right. And then for Archibald, Julio can just use basic battery to increase Archibald's already decent damage, and he can just help him spam Inescapable Arrow with a damage boost, which is pretty good. Piercing Arrow is kind of hard to set up, but it can be good if you get it off. Arrow Spray is also decent, but basically you just want Archibald to be spamming Inescapable Arrow. And then maybe Edged Arrow, because it ignores defense, so both are really good. So giving him a damage boost and then giving him extra TP to spam Inescapable Arrow is pretty good. And then for Corinton, getting him enough TP to Glacial Moon is the big idea. Corinton on Ice is 2 TP a turn. If Julio uses Finish Them or just keeps Inheritoring for 2, that can be, big value. Even if Corinton just catches like a Moment of Truth twice, he can use Glacial Moon every other turn. which is still good because Glacial Moon's insane. So even just with Moment of Truth, and also the damage boost helps, so that's the big reason you want Corinton and Julio on the same team. For Erador, you want to get Erador to King Shield, so Moment of Truth, probably not as good as, really the use case is like finish them, because you want Julio to either be kind of close to Erador or with your team and close enough to hit him with finish them from the 1 to 4 range, so he can spam King Shield. As long as Erador isn't spamming Provoke, he can get King Shield off pretty frequently, as long as he just like waits or just attacks. So, to conserve TP. Erador can also throw items and heal himself with healing items if you want to conserve TP while he's just tanking damage, assuming he is like using Provoke. But King Shield is the main reason you want to run these two together. And then for Benedict, pretty much all of his kit. Now, twofold turn and Dragon Shield. Benedict greatly benefits from a battery. Between Julio and Benedict, they both have high durability and physical defense, so they can both help protect your mages from enemy physical by body blocking. They can also help combo things just by standing next to enemies, and then, Serenoa, Roland, Maxwell, whoever can initiate follow-up attacks, and then they're just free chip damage. So he's good with Benedict for that reason. Frederica, he's good with for Sunfall. He can get her to 5 TP, which gives her the biggest damage. And then obviously with Frederica, you want her to have a turn accelerator so that when Sunfall actually goes off, it's consistent and you know where it's going to land. And the enemies haven't moved. And then for Milo, Power of Love is really good. It allows her at range to crowd control enemies and flip them, like causing them to take damage from other allies who aren't tempted and causing them to deal damage to other enemies who aren't tempted. So that kind of causes like a little mini civil war. So it's pretty good, wastes a lot of enemy turns. If she just hangs back with the team and just spams Power of Love with battery, it's one of the most oppressive things in the game, alongside Lionel's ability. So some other units that are good, you can use Julio to spam Above and Beyond with Cordelia to overheal. With these two, they don't really need Julio battery. Automatic turret's actually quite bad. Maxwell is good for high jump spam. He usually wants as many batteries as he can get. Flanagan with Ramparts is really good. Rite of Thunderstorms is okay, but it's whatever. Golden Opportunity is really good if you have a lot of money. Does really good damage. It's basically Power of Love with damage, but it costs you money, so pretty big downside if you're low on cash. Piccoletta doesn't need a battery. If you want to spam decoys, you can give her one, but she just wants to spam items. Decimal definitely needs a battery, so he's a good unit to run with Decimal. And then Quahog. Giovanna, she can benefit from a battery. It increases her magic damage. She can be okay with a battery. Serenoa, if you battery him, he can battery more things, so it's kind of like a gimmick, but he builds up TP just from conserving TP through throwing items and smacking with his sword, so I don't think he needs a battery. Roland, you can battery Roland. He doesn't really need it, but if you're going to do anything, you just Moment of Truth him just for damage boost, so he can, maybe get a 4 dragons off more consistently, get more Flash of Steals off. So if you use Roland and Julio, you can just keep Moment of Truthing Roland, and then he can just keep Flash of Stealing with 2 accuracy bracelets from the front if you want, and it does good damage and it's consistent. And then if you ever want Roland to break out, he can start 4 dragons, push things off cliffs, rush around enemies, stuff like that. But yeah, and then for Gila, she can benefit from a battery because of Miraculous Light Spam, put res on a bunch of dudes, and that's pretty much it for the units that benefit. Hewitt doesn't really need a battery, and she's going to be far away from the team. Anna can just spam items until she gets enough TP to use Deadly Blaze. So a lot of units are self-sufficient, but the ones that benefit from battery, like especially these 7 here, and Maxwell especially, it really opens up something in them. In Erador, it's like Absurd Shutdown, and Milo, it's Absurd Shutdown. These two, it's AoE nukes. In Quahog, it's Breaking the Game. And Benedict, it just makes him more efficient. And then for Archibald, it just allows him to get more inescapable arrows off with damage boost. So overall, he's a really strong unit. He works well with almost anything. He's never bad to run. It's always useful to have a battery, and even if he's not acting as a battery, he can always smack things for good damage and be like a follow-up attacker who's also quite tanky. So he's a pretty good unit overall, and there's really no downside of running him. But But yeah, that's pretty much it for his advanced guide. If you enjoyed this, definitely like the video and subscribe. If you have any comments as to either things I got wrong or things that are useful to use with Julio, or like some interesting or useful setups, definitely drop those. Or if you just have any comments in general, definitely comment. But yeah, that's it for now. Thanks for watching this, and I'll see you in the next one.